My name's Steve Sanders, and I get to introduce to you Dr. David Bradstreet. But first, I'd like to open with some prayer. So if you wouldn't mind joining me. Gracious God, thank you for getting us through the storm, and please be with those who are still in the storm. Give them warmth like we have today. Give them back their power. Bless our minds that we may gain knowledge about you to glorify everything that you will do. In your name, amen. So, Dr. David Bradstreet, if you've never had one of his classes, you are missing out, and here is why. Dr. Bradstreet was born and raised in Brockton, Massachusetts. Every once in a while, you get to have a little bit of the Boston accent in one of his classes. It's awesome. Came to Eastern and actually ran the planetarium as a freshman. Ran the planetarium as a freshman. Brought in tour groups while taking classes as a freshman. Got his undergraduate degree here at Eastern and Villanova in astronomy. Went on to get his graduate degree at UPenn, got his master's and doctorate there. At his time at UPenn, he actually got to study and go to Kitt Peak and Cerro Tololo, two beautiful telescope arrays in Chile and also here in America. Dr. Bradstreet has many awesome accolades. I'm just going to name a few. Winner of the Limbach Award here at Eastern. Also, Professor of the Year 5 years, I believe. 5 years. It's pretty awesome. Also, one of my other favorite ones was that Dr. Bradstreet in the last year went on a sabbatical, but instead of just kind of, taking a break and writing some papers, went over to Durham over in the UK and was a fellow over there giving talks on such things as the end of the world and other astronomical talks. Dr. Bradstreet also has fundraised, something that a lot of people don't know. Dr. Bradstreet has raised over $1 million or been a part of grants, fundraising that have brought in over $1 million for scientific research. That's over $1 million. That's a lot. Pretty amazing. Dr. Bradstreet has also written close to or published in one form or another, been a part of close to 100 publications. 100 publications. This is pretty amazing for a teacher here at Eastern University. And to be honest, when I looked at it, a lot of my professors are pretty awesome here. And Dr. Bradstreet is one of the top few. But I also have to name a couple other interesting facts I will put out there. Dr. Bradstreet is a 4th degree black belt in Taekwondo. I'm not joking. He is a master of the nunchucks, or what we would call the J-chucks. I'm not joking. Dr. Bradstreet also does not just do astronomy, was in a play, or a couple plays at Eastern when he was a student. So you get the idea of the well-roundedness. Dr. B is an astronomer by trade, but what I actually admire the most, and what I have the pleasure of, I've spent the last 11 years working for Dr. Bradstreet. The thing I admire, the thing I esteem the most about Dr. Bradstreet is his relationship with his wife, Colleen, and the family that they have raised. I have been a part of that. I almost feel, as much as I am a worker, I feel almost like a son to their family in a weird way. And it's one of those cool things. And I really esteem their marriage. The connection, the everyday walk that you have to go on to keep a marriage together. It is beautiful. So, without any further ado, Dr. David Bradstreet.
Thanks, Steve. The rest will be in the mail. Good morning. I hope everybody survived this past crazy week. And our prayers go out to people who are still suffering. An awful lot of people are still suffering and feel like it's the end of the world, all kidding aside. So please keep them in your prayers. And if you have funds to help the Red Cross or other charitable organizations through this, people in Jersey and New York are really suffering. So keep them in your prayers, and financially if you can. We are very, very fortunate. I can't believe Eastern didn't lose much power. We usually lose power when people sneeze. All right, so right to the end of the world, because the world's going to end soon, so we have to hurry up. Thanks, Maria, for coming. We'll start over for you. Okay, so the end of the world, although in my subtitle is, so why did you bother registering for classes if the world's coming to an end? That's what I think. I'm going to try and keep this lighthearted because, if it's the end of the world, there's not much you can do about it. We actually have a planetarium show starting tonight On the third floor, if you're interested in learning more details and seeing much better graphics than I'm going to show you this morning, planetarium shows tonight and Saturday, and also next Friday and next Saturday, assuming the world is still here, at 7 and 8 o'clock. And it's $5 a person, and we can take about 35 in each show, so come early, because this is also open to the public, and usually it fills up pretty quickly. Okay? Okay. So, you want to memorize this chart. If you go to Wikipedia, which is probably the best source in the world for information, if you just type into Google, just say end of the world dates, and you'll find many, many, many. I just chose a few particular ones here that I'm really excited about. People who are my age remember this stuff. Remember, anybody here remember Comet Kohoutek from '73? Just out of curiosity. Yeah, you guys are old. Yeah, this was a big deal in the 70s, and Comet Kohoutek was one of the biggest duds ever as far as a comet goes. You could hardly see it. John Gribben came up. He's a what I call a pseudo-astronomer. He came up with this idea that when the planets were aligning, that their mutual gravitational effect on the Earth would cause all kinds of stuff. That's better known as crap. Well, because it's a scientific term. The gravitational attraction between the Earth and the other planets is very, very, very small, a tiny fraction of what the moon pulls on us. So their gravitational effect on us is basically negligible. You might have heard of a guy named Pat Robertson. It's very discouraging for me to go through the list of all the ends of the world dates, and there's a preponderance of Christians that make the list. Pat Robertson is not the only one. Edgar Whisenant, you may not remember him, but in 1988 he published a pamphlet called 88 Reasons Why Christ is Coming Back in 88. And then when he didn't come back, he published another one saying 89 Reasons Why He's Coming Back in 89. He's going to make a life's work out of this. And for some reason, nobody believed the 89 one. A lot of people believe the 88 one, believe me. You may remember that. More recently, Marshall Applewhite, remember him? Yeah, he's dead. He led this, and unfortunately, the people who believed him, there was an image of the comet Hale-Bopp. Hale-Bopp looks like that. Ooh. They took this image of Hale-Bopp, and behind it was an unidentified object, which he said was an alien spacecraft. And so he and his cult committed suicide so that they could then be beamed up, Scotty, up into the spacecraft. I remember this because I took the image of this unknown object, put it in a star map, and it was just a star. You know, it matched up perfectly with the star. So ignorance is really bad. This is one reason you're at school. You know, that and to meet your spouse. I love the 2003 one. I've put this one in particular because this actually pertains to what we're doing. Nancy Leader said that we're going to get hit by Nibiru, which I'll mention again later. And I love the way she found this out. But since we're still here since 2003, I don't think that worked. Harold Camping you may have heard of him recently. Harold Camping. The Bryants, that's their favorite prophet. Well, they were talking to me about Harold Camping. If you go back and look, Harold Camping has made many predictions of the end of the world prior to the 2011 ones. And then the prophet called bandwagon, this last one that you probably can't see through me, everybody's jumping on this bandwagon. So this is the real thing, though. So we want to pay close attention to this. So, oh no, the end of the world. See smart settings? With computers, it's always the opposite of that. Okay. So there's Hale-Bopp. All right, let's get going. I'm going to a little sidebar here. I mentioned Hale-Bopp. There actually is going to be, you may not have heard of this yet. This is true, I'm all kidding aside. There actually is going to be perhaps an extremely prominent comet coming next November, not this November. Well, while I think of it, we get to set our clocks back this weekend, so you get an extra hour to sleep on Sunday. And I just thought I'd mention that because most people wake up on Sunday and they miss church and then you're going to hell. So you might want to set your clocks correctly. A relatively newly discovered comet, it's only been known for about 2 months, called ISON. I'm not sure what that stands for, and I don't even want to play with it, but let me show you what this comet may look like from Eastern. It could be quite bright, so much so you could actually see it in the daytime, and it may cover half the sky. That's what they're predicting. Comet predictions are usually dead wrong, but there's the gem and so on. This is the orbit of it. It'd be easier to see in the morning than the evening, so that could be quite cool. But if the comet really starts to show like they're thinking it's going to show, my prediction is that they're going to say that this means the end of the world. Because people like to say end of the world because it gives them something to say. So how did this thing about the Mayans and the December 21st, 2012 thing start? Well, it started with the Nibiru thing, this so-called planet that the Sumerians, these are some Sumerians. The Sumerians were very stiff and wooden people. And they looked very strange. You know, and they were nestled in between the Tigris and Euphrates rivers like 20 years ago. No, it's like 3000 BC. Okay. And supposedly, these guys talked about this planet Nibiru, which they actually never did. They were actually talking about Marduk, one of their gods. It's all a hoax. But it was brought back to light when Nancy Lieder claimed that aliens from Zeta Reticuli, which is a star relatively near to the sun, spoke to her through a brain implant that said that Nibiru would come in and tip the Earth's rotational axis and thereby destroy most of humanity, which to me sounds like a bummer. The claim was that this was going to happen in May of 2003. Now it's 2012. So when that didn't happen, she said, oh, they got it wrong. It's really December 2012. Because as everybody knows, alien brain implants are very unreliable. So they often get dates wrong. So it's just not going to work. That's the way it goes. I thought this was Mark Hallen, but I'm not. It probably isn't. Well, when they made this prediction about Nibiru coming back in December 2012, they noticed by coincidence that the Mayan long count calendar also was coming to a close on December 21st, 2012, which is our winter solstice, the first day of winter, the day after the last day of autumn. So, of course, the coincidental, gee, Nibiru's coming back in December 2012 by this crazy lady, and the fact that the Mayan calendar was ending, that means the end of the world, right? Or at least the end of autumn. So this is where the Mayans used to live. They flourished really between 600 and 900 AD, but they were around quite a long time. And there's lots of Mayans still around. You know, a lot of the Mexican people are actually direct descendants of Mayans. I'm not going to bore you with all the details of the Mayan calendar. There are actually 3 Mayan calendars. There's one based on 260 days called the Zolkin. There's one based on the 365 seasonal day year. That's called the Ha'ab. Aren't you impressed that I can? No, you're not. And these calendars ran together. This is to wake people up. Look. See, it's like you got the 2 calendars running like gears of different sizes, okay? And so the same day, I know you don't want to see that again. As they go together, if you had one day in the same calendar, it wouldn't reoccur until they coincided again, which takes like 52 years. And so this 52-year length of time was pretty long enough for most Mayans because they didn't live to be much past 18, or you know, they lost their hearts or whatever. No, they never cut out hearts? That's what we were told by the Mayan guide on our trip. But he was lying. That's bad. It's bad hype. Now, the long count calendar was put in so that they could describe periods of time longer than 52 years. Okay? So the long count actually covers about 5,126 years. So that's long enough to take care of, you know, most things except maybe the length of time the Simpsons have been on TV. And the way the long count works is it's grouped in, like we have months. They didn't have months. They had different lengths of time of 13 periods and 20 and 20 and 18 and 20. Okay, so for example, May 11th, 2012 could be written in the Mayan long count calendar as 12, 19, 19, 6, 16. Got it?
get it?
No, you're not supposed to get it. But the importance of it is that if you go back to the beginning of their long count calendar, the very first day of the long count calendar was August 11th, 3114, what we would call BC. So 5,126 years later, at the end of the calendar happens to be December 21st, 2012. So that's the end of the calendar of the long count. Got it? Okay, it makes perfect sense. So December 22nd, let's see if you can figure this out. What would the long count calendar be, if there is one, after? It starts over again. I'll show you. On December 31st, what happens after December 31st? It goes to January. So if you want... So what the Mayans, even the modern Mayan historians today will tell you is if you're worried about what to do after December 2012, go to Staples, buy a calendar. I love, this is my favorite cartoon about this. I only had enough room to go up to 2012. Yeah, that'll freak somebody out someday. You can actually learn a lot from cartoons. It's kind of pretty much like government, but that's another story. And the reason I say that is because this calendar, which is in this cartoon, it's not a Mayan calendar at all. It's an Aztec calendar. It has nothing to do with the Mayans. It was made hundreds of years after the Mayan civilization was over. So I know you don't care about that either. But this is similar. Look, my car's about to explode. You understand? If you see the odometer in your car as saying that your car is going to stop after the odometer runs out of numbers, that's exactly the same logic, better known as, that's right, no logic whatsoever. Yeah. In fact, if you look into this with any kind of detail, you find that the only reference in the Mayan records, of which unfortunately there are few because the Spanish missionaries burned all the Mayan codices because, you know, they're pagans, so we don't want to learn anything from them. There is a tablet, though, that mentions the end of the long count. And if you translate, now you can see this tablet's been damaged, so it's a little hard to translate it completely. But the parts you can translate, it talks about the kins, the winals, the tuns. Those are actually the different cycles, the 13, the 20 to 20, or they call these different things. And so on this tablet is the actual inscription date of the tablet, which is January 9th, 1084. And then also on it, it says December 21st, and then it translates this. It will happen, in other words, this December 21st thing, it will happen the witnessing of the adornment of Bolonyakte in the great investiture. So that's very clear as to what that means. The thing I don't understand about Bolonyakte and this diagram, if you look very carefully, he's got the biggest big toe I've ever seen in my life. And that's probably why the Mayans didn't prosper. Actually, if you look at the other translations of when they talk about Bolonyakte and so on, this was probably referring to a celebration of this god of war, Bolonyakte, and that at the end of the cycle, they would have a party. So it's probably like New Year's Eve, right? Don't we celebrate at the end of the, yes? It says nothing about the world coming to an end at all. So here's actually a Mayan inscription of it's party time. They were big, very big into blue. That's true, that's not a joke. I don't know why. They liked blue. Okay, enough of that. Now this is, this is cute. This is Neil deGrasse Tyson. He's the astronomer at the Hayden Planetarium in New York City. And I love this. He says, yeah, the Mayans predicted the 2012 apocalypse. Well, they didn't see the Spanish coming. In other words, you know, that's very sad, but I mean, in other words, they didn't even know that their civilization is going to be wiped out by smallpox from the Europeans, and yet they predicted the end of the world? Yeah, that's the way he talks. So what about these predictions? So I pretty much, the Mayan thing is complete bonkers dumb, okay? What about all the predictions that have emanated from this? Okay? Since most people don't know much about astronomy, they're much more likely to believe stuff because they don't know any astronomy, right? So let me show you some of the predictions, and you'll see how nonsensical most of this is. One of the predictions is that we're going to get hit by a large body, and this is a picture from the aliens that they sent to me of the future of the Earth getting hit. There are things called asteroids still in the solar system. They're rocks that go from tiny grains of sand all the way up to several hundred miles across. And yeah, if we get hit by some of these, that would be bad. And near-Earth grazing asteroids are discovered, several each year, some that come within tens of thousands of miles of the Earth. One was just discovered about a month ago, like 2 days before it was going to be closest approach to Earth. But closest approach was like 80,000 miles away. So I you don't have to worry about that so much. Are we going to get hit by an asteroid someday? The answer is yes. I usually tell my astronomy students it's next Tuesday, but I promised I wouldn't say that. Because in this context, next Tuesday has other connotations. But the asteroid belt lies between Mars and Jupiter. What can happen is the asteroids can hit each other, they can collide, that can adjust or knock out their orbits, and then that can send debris coming in towards the Earth. We don't want to get hit by these, because they travel at 30 or 40,000 miles an hour. And if they're several hundred feet across and made out of nickel iron, that's going to destroy a city. And this kind of thing has happened in the past. In 1908, in Siberia, something called the Tunguska event, either a small asteroid or a comet nucleus came into the atmosphere at about 30,000 miles an hour and exploded 5 miles above the ground, thankfully. But it flattened an 800 square mile region of forest in Siberia. If that happened over New York City, that would be the end of New York City. So this is actual photographs. Can you see the trees all leaning down like matchsticks? It was like that for 800 square miles. And it didn't even hit the ground. It exploded in the air with a blast of about 15 megatons, which is a pretty good sized atomic weapon. Hit another hole in Arizona. This is 50,000 years ago. This was a 10 megaton blast, and that made a crater about a mile across. This is really cool. If you ever get to Arizona and you want something to do, go look at this. It's really cool. They don't let you inside because then you can't get out. We have been hit by things in the past. If you come to the planetarium show, you'll actually get to see this on the dome. It's kind of impressive. This is called the KT incident. This is what destroyed all the dinosaurs, they say. That this 3 or 4 mile wide asteroid came and struck the Earth, the part of the Earth we now call the Yucatan Peninsula, coincidentally where the Mayans lived. So I'm sure that was related, except this happened 65 million years ago. And that event is probably what triggered the extinction of about 60 to 70% of all species on the Earth at that time. So mass extinction, which happens a lot on the Earth in its past history, may be triggered by such catastrophic events. Actually, this is the real way the dinosaurs died. Yeah. Yeah, I don't understand it either. All right. So, could we get hit by something? The answer is yes, we're going to be hit by something. And I'll talk more about that at the end. The question is when, not if. And Bruce Willis is not going to be able to save us. So it's, eventually we are going to get hit. It's going to cause a catastrophe that's going to make Sandy look like a joke. So it's something not to worry about because there's nothing we can do about it. When it happens, it's God's will. And we'll talk about that later. Next prediction. This is probably one of the most ubiquitous of all the December 21st, 2012 predictions, and that is that the sun on December 21st, 2012 is going to line up with the center of the Milky Way. And so the gravitational influence of the Milky Way plus the sun is going to make all kinds of tides and terrible things happen on the Earth. Okay, well that's complete nonsense. Let me show you why. Yes, at the winter solstice, the sun is relatively close to the direction of the center of the Milky Way. So here's the Milky Way. There's the sun, December 21st, okay, at the solstice. Let me zoom in so you can see it a little more closely. And the little green thing marks Sagittarius A star is the center of the Milky Way. There's a large 4 million solar mass black hole that lives there. There's also a restaurant there. That's the center. So that's, see, sun, center. See how well aligned they are? Actually, the sun was better aligned in 1999, and the Earth was destroyed in 1999, but you didn't realize it. You were busy studying. If you go ahead and can see the black hole is this huge, whatever a black hole is, and it's got stuff all around it sucking it all up, and it's an exciting place to be if you want to die. So this again is complete nonsense. Yes, the sun on December 21st is in the direction of the center of the Milky Way. This supermassive black hole, which indeed is huge and violent, is 20,000 light years away. That's even further away than Philadelphia. We're talking far away. It takes light 20,000 years to get to us. Better known as its gravitational influence on us is about how much my cat has on me at home in Norristown, better known as none. So don't worry about that alignment, okay? It's not going to happen. Okay. I hate it when that happens. Okay, let's see another prediction. Oh, this is a good one. I love this one. Do you know what a magnetic field is? Yeah, magnetic field is a mathematical way of describing how magnetism affects space. Yeah, that really helped. Do you guys put missionaries up on your refrigerators? Religious people do that. Those who don't know what I'm talking about, there's no hope for you. Well, if you mathematically described how a magnet affects the space around it, we call that a magnetic field. Talk to Dr. Gianmarco. He'll wave his hands better than I can on that. The Earth has a polarity, right? If you take a compass out, one needle points to the north and the other points to the south, depending on where you are. It's not that accurate, okay? Actually, the south end of the needle points north because opposites attract. That's why my wife married me. Now, so what they're saying is that on December 21st, the polarity of the Earth's magnetic field is going to flip. So if you have a compass and it's pointing to north, on December 22nd, the needle's going to go like that. And it will make that noise because that's part of the flipping. So they're claiming that the magnetic field is going to switch its polarity. Now, has the magnetic field of the Earth switched? Yes, it has. Does it happen a lot? Actually, it has. But it happens very infrequently and sporadically. It's impossible to predict. We don't know why it happens. There is some suspicion that it happens after collisions with asteroids. For example, there was a magnetic polarity switch after the dinosaurs were destroyed 65 million years ago, which coincides with that particular impact. So that's a possibility. So if we get hit, maybe it will switch. If it does switch, what will happen? Here's a little map of the magnetic field of the Earth. Looks like an onion that's had issues. What would probably happen is this magnetic field is like a shield for us, and it prevents some charged particles from the sun and from interstellar space to come and hit us. So extra radiation would hit the Earth, and there might be an increase in skin cancer, but it's not going to kill everybody. Okay? So even if it does switch, it's not like the end of the world. Okay? The biggest problem will be you'll have to switch your compasses around. So I wouldn't worry too much about that one. Oh, giant solar storm is destroying the Earth. I love this one. The sun has an 11-year cycle called the Sunspot Cycle. You don't hear about this in the news, but the sun is not following this 11-year cycle very much. In fact, it's about almost a year and a half behind where it should be. No, you haven't heard about this, have you? Yeah, because that would impact climate change. And we don't want to talk about that, because that's politically bad. So the sun is actually behind where it should be. It's not as active as it should be. It should be rising in activity, and it hasn't been. What they're saying is that all of a sudden the sun's going to go wacky, and there's going to be all kinds of violence, and we're all going to be destroyed and stuff. That probably isn't going to happen. Look, I have a movie. So there's the sun. How exciting is that? So the sun is very violent. Yes, the sun can throw all kinds of radiation towards us. It can knock out satellites. It can destroy all kinds of communication equipment. It can even cause transformers on the ground to explode, stuff like that, when the sun is very active. The sun is not predicted to be active at all in 2013, or not very active, although we could be wrong because we don't really know what's going on with the sun. We don't know why its solar cycle is depressed right now. If you ask Steve, we have little kids come up in the observatory, we look at the sun all the time. They have two eyes, you can burn one out, it's not a problem. So we look And there's hardly been any sunspots on the sun for the past several years, and there should be more and more, and they're just now starting to appear. And you don't hear anything about it in the news, do you? Yeah, exactly. So we don't understand the sun. If you want to know what causes climate change on the Earth, it's something called the sun. Okay, another prediction they're making is that nearby star is going to go supernova, and it will irradiate and destroy the Earth and all life with it. So yes, if a supernova occurred nearby, it would wipe us out. That's true. But supernovae only occur in massive stars, which are also very bright stars. And there are no large massive stars nearby enough to blow up that are going to kill us. The last one occurred in 1572 in Cassiopeia, and only half the population of the Earth was destroyed at that time. I just want to see if anybody's listening. Nobody is, so that's good. This is actually the remains of this supernova in 1572 in Cassiopeia. And I mean, it's so far away that the only person that noticed it was a guy named Tycho Brahe, and he had no nose, so who cares? So here's the question. How will the Earth end? Or will it end? Okay? So if Jesus doesn't come back for a very, very long time, what's going to happen is the sun runs out of hydrogen fuel. And when it does that, it starts to get very upset. In its old age, like old people, it starts to get senile and it gets bloated and turns into what's called a red supergiant. In fact, it will get so large that its outer atmosphere, why are you laughing, Nancy? It's just old. As the sun expands, this is what happens when you get old, you expand. It's going to expand out to the orbit of Mars. The sun will be the size of the orbit of Mars. The sun will be the size of the orbit of Mars. That's big. And remember that the orbit of the Earth is within that, so we get eaten. So here's the sun as a red giant in 5 billion years. That's a gig a year for you guys. And you can see it goes out to, that's the orbit of, so that's the end of the Earth. When the sun turns into a red giant, it will consume the Earth, and that's the end of it. I told my son this, Jonathan, when he was about 3 years old, and every night for the next week he said, Dad, when's that happening? When's that happening? So don't tell your little kids that this is happening because they don't understand the difference between a week and 5 billion years. This is also how I know this isn't going to happen. You all saw in the movie that Marty McFly went to 2015, so that's, you know, we're not going to die in 2012 because that's, right? Okay, and here's another, I love this cartoon. A fearless prediction for December 22nd. You see he's destroyed his sign? And he says, stupid Mayas. Well, he had to be there. So my suggestion, how as Christians are we to take this? Okay, try not to get on the bandwagon of so many people that, you know, the end is near, because Jesus said what? Who knows when the end is coming? Only his Father. Yes? Only his Father knows. It'll happen when it's supposed to happen. And we've got stuff to go through before that, yes? Depending on whether you get raptured, post, pre, whatever. I always tell my students, assume you're not getting raptured till the end, because Christians almost never get out of anything. Right? And if we're wrong, cool, I'd love to be wrong there, but I don't think that's going to happen. Also, if somebody comes to you and says, I am the Christ, you know right away he's not the Christ. Because Jesus said that nobody's going to have to tell you that I have returned. That my coming back will be like lightning, which is seen from east to west. If you check the Matthew reference. Do you understand? If somebody has to tell you that Jesus has come back, he hasn't come back. When he comes back, there will be not a soul on the earth who doesn't know it instantly. Got it? Because that's what Scripture says, and that's what I believe. If you go to Revelation, which I know is a wacky book, but it's got some things in it that are very interesting astronomically speaking. In Revelation 8:8, it talks about an angel throwing something like a great mountain burning with fire into the sea, and a third of the sea became as blood. That sounds like an asteroid coming in to me. So I wouldn't be surprised if God triggers the tribulation by some kind of natural catastrophe which humans have no control over. You saw what happened this week with Sandy, yes? Now imagine a 3 or 4 mile wide, 40,000 mile per hour asteroid coming in, striking the ocean and creating a tidal wave which would go, whichever ocean it hits. across the entire ocean 1 mile high. 1 mile high. So that would be bad. And that's what Revelation talks about. Is it going to happen? Yes, we're going to get hit someday. When? We don't know. But I can almost guarantee you it's not going to be December 21st. Okay, this is just one more in a long, lengthy series of doomsday predictions, which is really, quite frankly, utter nonsense. And astronomically speaking anyway. Could Jesus come back tomorrow? Probably, but probably not till after you graduate. Okay. Thank you very much. That's all I have for you. Now, if you have any questions for me, I'd be happy to answer questions. Yes?
You said the Mayans were 600 to 900.
That's the classic period. The question was the Mayans were 600 to 900. That's the classical period. That's when they thrived.
So why was the long count started in 3000 BC?
I don't know. I don't know why they started it then. It's a good question. Any other questions? Aren't you happy that it's not going to end on December 21st? Yeah. I can tell you we're all worried. That's why you registered for the spring semester. I know. Yeah. Okay? Okay. Thank you very much.